The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the downtown Indianapolis office building as Caitlin Clark stepped out of the elevator on the 15th floor. Her sneakers squeaked softly against the polished marble floor as she walked toward the glass doors marked Excel Sports Management. Just 3 months earlier, she had been playing college basketball at Iowa. Now, at 22 years old, she was about to make one of the biggest decisions of her life. The receptionist smiled warmly as Caitlin approached the front desk. "Good morning, Miss Clark. They're waiting for you in conference room A." Her voice carried a hint of excitement, the kind people get when they're around someone famous. Caitlin nodded politely and followed the directions down a hallway lined with framed photos of professional athletes. As she pushed open the heavy wooden door to the conference room, Caitlin was greeted by her agent, David Miller, and 2 other members of her management team. The room was impressive, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the Indianapolis skyline. But what caught her attention immediately was the large mahogany table in the center of the room, covered with what looked like dozens of manila folders and documents. "Caitlin, welcome," David said, standing up from his chair. "I hope you're ready for this because what we're about to show you is going to change your life forever." David gestured toward the table, and Caitlin could see that each folder was labeled with different team names and league logos. Some she recognized like EuroLeague Women and WNBA. Others were completely foreign to her, with names written in languages she couldn't even identify. "What is all this?" Caitlin asked, pulling out a chair and sitting down. Her heart was beating faster than usual, though she tried to keep her voice calm. "These," David said, picking up one of the thicker folders, "are contract offers. All for you and Caitlin, I have to tell you. In my 20 years as a sports agent, I've never seen anything like this." He opened the first folder and pulled out a document with an official letterhead. "This one is from a team in Spain. They're offering $12 million for 2 years. That includes a luxury apartment in Madrid, a personal car, and they'll even pay for Spanish language lessons." Caitlin's eyes widened. $12 million was more money than her family had ever dreamed of. Growing up in Iowa, her parents had worked hard to support her basketball dreams, but they were far from wealthy. Her father worked at a manufacturing plant, and her mother was a part-time teacher. The idea of earning that much money in just 2 years seemed almost impossible to believe. David continued, opening another folder. "This one is from a team in Turkey, $15 million for 3 years. They're promising to make you the face of their entire league, with your own marketing, campaigns, and endorsement deals." One by one, David went through the folders. A team in Russia was offering $18 million. A league in China had put together a package worth $22 million over 4 years. Each offer seemed more incredible than the last, with perks and benefits that sounded like something out of a movie. "And this one," David said, saving what appeared to be the thickest folder for last. "This one is special. It's from a new professional league that's being created specifically around you. They're calling it the Global Women's Basketball Alliance, and they want you to be their founding superstar." He opened the folder carefully as if it contained something precious. "Caitlin, they're offering you $50 million over 5 years. But that's just the beginning. You would also get a percentage of all league revenue, your own signature basketball line, and they're even talking about building a training facility named after you." Caitlin sat in stunned silence. $50 million. The number was so large, it didn't even feel real. She thought about her college dorm room, which she had shared with a roommate just a few months ago. She thought about the times her family had to budget carefully for gas money to drive to her basketball games. "There's more," David said gently. "They want to base the league in Europe, but they're willing to play games all over the world. You'd be traveling to different countries every few weeks, playing in front of sold-out crowds who are desperate to see you play." The room fell quiet as Caitlin tried to process everything she had just heard. Through the large windows, she could see people walking on the streets below, going about their normal daily lives. None of them had any idea that a 22-year-old woman was sitting 15 floors above them, being offered more money than most people would earn in several lifetimes. "What about the WNBA?" Caitlin finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. David's expression changed slightly. He reached for a much thinner folder at the far end of the table. Well, you were drafted first overall by the Indiana Fever, which is obviously a huge honor. The contract is standard for a rookie. He opened the folder and pulled out a single document. 4 years, total value of about $338,000. Your first-year salary would be $76,535. Caitlin stared at the number. $76,000 had seemed like a lot of money when she first heard it. After all, it was more than what many college graduates made in their first jobs. But compared to the international offers spread across the table, it looked almost insignificant. I need you to understand something, Caitlin, David said, leaning forward in his chair. These international offers aren't just about basketball. You've become a global phenomenon. The NCAA championship game you played in had more viewers than the men's final for the first time in history. People who had never watched women's basketball before are now huge fans, and it's all because of you. He picked up his phone and showed her a video clip. This is from a basketball court in the Philippines. Look at this. The video showed dozens of young girls, probably around 10 or 12 years old, practicing basketball moves. But they weren't just playing casually. They were copying Caitlin's signature moves, the same long-range three-point shots and no-look passes that had made her famous in college. They're calling these girls Little Caitlins, David explained. This same thing is happening in countries all over the world. You're not just a basketball player anymore, you're a global icon. Caitlin watched the video with a mixture of amazement and overwhelming responsibility. She had always loved basketball and had dreamed of playing professionally, but she had never imagined that her influence would reach so far beyond the basketball court. The teams overseas understand your value, David continued. They're not just offering you money to play basketball. They're offering you the chance to be the centerpiece of an entire sports and entertainment empire. You could have your own TV shows, your own line of athletic clothing, your own basketball academies. One of the other team members, Jennifer Walsh, spoke up for the first time. Caitlin, we also need to talk about timing. Some of these offers won't wait forever. The European leagues start their season soon, and they need an answer within the next few weeks. The pressure in the room was becoming almost tangible. Caitlin felt like she was standing at a crossroads with each path leading to a completely different future. One path led to immediate wealth and international stardom. The other led to staying in America, playing in a league where she would earn a fraction of what she could make overseas. What do other players do? Caitlin asked. I mean, do WNBA players usually take these kinds of overseas offers? David nodded. Many of them do. Some of the biggest stars in the WNBA play overseas during the off-season to supplement their income. For some players, they actually make more money playing overseas than they do in the WNBA. He pulled out another folder, this one containing newspaper articles and printouts from websites. Look at these stories. They're all about WNBA players who have to choose between their American teams and much more lucrative opportunities abroad. Some of the biggest names in women's basketball spend more time playing in other countries than they do in the United States. Caitlin looked through the articles. Story after story described talented American players who had left the WNBA for better opportunities overseas. Some never came back. Others tried to balance both, flying back and forth between countries and exhausting themselves in the process. The thing is, Caitlin, Jennifer added, you're in a unique position. Most players don't get offers like this right out of college. Usually they have to prove themselves in the WNBA first before international teams take notice. But your college career was so extraordinary that everyone wants you right now. David stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the city below. Caitlin, I want to be completely honest with you. From a purely financial perspective, taking one of these international offers is a no-brainer. You could set yourself and your family up for life. You could buy your parents a house, pay off any debts, and never have to worry about money again. He turned back to face her. But I also know that money isn't the only thing that matters to you. You've always talked about wanting to help grow women's basketball in America. You've said you want little girls in Iowa to have the same opportunities you had. The weight of the decision was starting to feel overwhelming. Caitlin had always been confident on the basketball court, able to make split-second decisions under pressure. 3 days after the meeting with her agents, Caitlin's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She sat on her couch in her small Indianapolis apartment, watching the notifications pile up faster than she could read them. ESPN wanted an exclusive interview. Sports Illustrated was calling every hour. Even talk shows like Jimmy Fallon were reaching out through her management team. The news about the overseas offers had somehow leaked to the media, and now everyone had an opinion about what she should do with her life. Caitlin Clark could make millions overseas. Should she leave America? Read one headline on her phone screen. Another article asked, is the WNBA worth staying for? The comment sections were even worse, filled with strangers arguing about her future as if they knew her personally. Her apartment doorbell rang, and Caitlin looked through the peephole to see her college teammate Kate Martin standing in the hallway with a bag of takeout food and a concerned expression. I figured you might need some company, Kate said when Caitlin opened the door. And some real food that isn't delivered by reporters trying to get a quote. They sat on the couch together, eating Chinese food and scrolling through social media. Kate had been Caitlin's roommate during their final year at Iowa, and she was one of the few people who really understood the pressure Caitlin was under. Look at this one, Kate said, showing Caitlin a video on TikTok. It was a former WNBA player named Diana Taurasi, speaking directly to the camera. Caitlin, honey, you need to get that money. I spent 20 years fighting for better pay in this league, and if someone offered me $50 million tomorrow, I'd be on the first plane out of here. The video had over 2 million views and thousands of comments. Most people agreed with Diana's advice. Get the bag, Caitlin, wrote one user. You owe it to yourself and your family to take that money. But not everyone felt the same way. Caitlin found another video from Sue Bird, another WNBA legend who had recently retired. This isn't just about Caitlin, Sue said seriously. This is about the future of women's basketball in America. If our biggest star leaves right when we're starting to get attention, what message does that send? Kate put down her phone and looked at her friend. How are you holding up with all this? Caitlin sighed deeply. Honestly, I feel like I'm drowning. Everyone wants me to make this huge decision, but they all want me to make a different choice. Half the people say I'm crazy if I don't take the money. The other half say I'm abandoning women's basketball if I leave. Her phone rang again. This time it was her mother calling from Iowa. Hi, Mom, Caitlin answered, putting the call on speaker so Kate could hear. Sweetheart, your father and I just saw the news. Her mother's voice came through the phone, sounding worried. Are you okay? This all seems so overwhelming. I'm managing, Caitlin replied, though her voice betrayed her stress. It's just a lot to think about. You know we support whatever decision you make, her mother continued. But honey, some of these numbers they're talking about on the news, that's more money than we've made in our entire lives combined. Are you sure you shouldn't at least consider it? Even her own parents were feeling the pressure. Caitlin could hear it in her mother's voice. The hope that maybe their daughter could solve all their family's financial worries with one decision. I know, Mom. I'm thinking about everything. I promise. After she hung up, Caitlin felt the weight of expectations pressing down on her even more heavily. It wasn't just about her anymore. Her parents had sacrificed so much for her basketball career, driving hundreds of miles to games, paying for camps and training, supporting her dreams even when money was tight. Now she had the chance to pay them back 1,000 times over. Next morning, Caitlin decided she needed to get out of her apartment. She drove to a small coffee shop on the outskirts of Indianapolis, hoping to find some peace and quiet to think. But even there she was recognized. Excuse me, are you Caitlin Clark? Asked a teenage girl who couldn't have been more than 16. She was wearing a basketball jersey with Caitlin's college number on it. Yeah, that's me, Caitlin replied with a tired smile. I just wanted to say thank you, the girl continued, her eyes lighting up with excitement. I've been playing basketball since I was 8, and watching you in college made me believe that maybe I could actually make it to the WNBA someday. You made women's basketball cool. The girl's mother approached, looking slightly embarrassed. Rebecca, don't bother her. I'm sure she's busy. No, it's okay, Caitlin said quickly. She looked at Rebecca, who was practically bouncing with excitement. "You really want to play in the WNBA?" "More than anything," Rebecca replied. "My coach says I'm good enough to get a college scholarship, and maybe after that. Who knows? But you proved that people actually want to watch women play basketball. Before you, nobody at my school even knew there was a women's professional league." After Rebecca and her mother left, Caitlin sat alone with her coffee, thinking about what the teenager had said. She pulled out her phone and started reading some of the articles about her situation more carefully. One piece was written by a sports journalist who had covered women's basketball for decades. Caitlin Clark's decision will determine whether women's basketball in America takes a giant leap forward or gets set back by years, the article read. If she leaves now, just as the sport is gaining mainstream attention, it could be devastating for the growth of the WNBA. But another article made the opposite argument. Clark owes nothing to the WNBA, it stated. The league has had over 20 years to figure out how to pay players fairly, and they've failed. Why should one young woman sacrifice millions of dollars to fix their problems? Caitlin's phone buzzed with a text message from her college coach, Lisa Bluter. "Saw the news. Want to talk? I'm here if you need someone to listen." An hour later, Caitlin was sitting in Coach Bluter's office at the University of Iowa, the same place where she had spent countless hours over the past 4 years. The walls were covered with photos from their recent tournament runs, including several pictures of Caitlin holding trophies and celebrating with her teammates. "This is harder than any game I ever played," Caitlin admitted to her former coach. "In basketball, I always knew what to do. I could see the court, find the open player, make the right decision, but this, I have no idea what the right choice is." Coach Bluter leaned back in her chair. "You know, when I first started coaching women's basketball 30 years ago, people told me I was wasting my time. They said nobody would ever care about women's sports the way they care about men's sports. But I believed that if we just kept working, kept getting better, eventually people would notice." She pointed to a newspaper clipping on her wall from the recent NCAA tournament. "Look at this headline. Women's Basketball Championship draws record audience. Caitlin, you helped make that happen. You brought millions of people into this sport who had never watched before. But what if I can do more good by taking one of these overseas offers?" Caitlin asked. "What if I use that platform to promote women's basketball globally?" Coach Bluter nodded thoughtfully. "That's possible, but think about this. Every sport needs heroes that people can relate to. Basketball fans in America want to see American players succeeding in American leagues. If you leave now, who becomes the face of women's basketball here?" That evening, Caitlin drove back to her apartment feeling more confused than ever. As she pulled into her parking spot, she noticed a small group of young girls playing basketball on the court next to her building. They couldn't have been more than 10 or 11 years old, but they were trying to copy the same long-range shots that had made her famous. One of the girls noticed her getting out of her car. "Oh my gosh, that's Caitlin Clark," she whispered loudly to her friends. The girls ran over, basketball still in hand. "Are you really going to play for the Fever?" one of them asked excitedly. "We got season tickets for my birthday," another girl added. "My dad said we're going to watch you play right here in Indianapolis." Caitlin looked at their hopeful faces and felt her heart sink. These girls had no idea about the overseas offers or the financial pressures she was facing. All they knew was that their hero was supposed to be playing basketball in their city. "We'll see," Caitlin said softly. "Keep practicing those shots, okay?" As she walked up to her apartment, Caitlin realized that her decision wasn't just about money or even about her own career. It was about all the Rebeccas and all the young girls on the basketball court who saw her as proof that their dreams were possible. But it was also about her family, who had given up so much for her success. It was about financial security that could change not just her life, but the lives of everyone she cared about. Standing in her doorway, looking back at the girls still practicing on the court, Caitlin felt the full weight of a decision that would impact far more people than just herself. Whatever choice she made, someone would be disappointed. The question was, could she live with that disappointment? The phone calls, the interviews, the pressure from every direction. It was all building to a moment when she would have to choose not just her future, but the future of women's basketball in America. The call came on a Tuesday morning while Caitlin was eating breakfast and trying to ignore the stack of newspapers on her kitchen table. Each one had her face on the front page with headlines about her big decision. Her phone rang, displaying a number she didn't recognize with a New York area code. "Hello, Caitlin. This is Kathy Engelbert, Commissioner of the WNBA. I was wondering if you might have some time to meet with me today." Caitlin nearly choked on her cereal. The commissioner of the entire league wanted to meet with her personally. "Of course," she managed to say. "When and where?" "I'm actually flying into Indianapolis this afternoon. Could we meet at the WNBA offices downtown around 3 o'clock? I have something important I'd like to discuss with you." 3 hours later, Caitlin found herself in a sleek conference room on the 20th floor of a downtown skyscraper. Commissioner Engelbert was nothing like what Caitlin had expected. She was warm and approachable with an energy that immediately put Caitlin at ease. "First, let me say congratulations on everything you've accomplished," Commissioner Engelbert began, sitting across from Caitlin at a small round table. "What you did in college basketball was truly extraordinary. You brought more attention to women's basketball than we've seen in decades." "Thank you," Caitlin replied, wondering where this conversation was heading. Commissioner Engelbert opened a folder and pulled out several charts and graphs. "Caitlin, I want to show you something that might surprise you. These are our television ratings from this past season." She pointed to a graph showing a steady upward trend. "This line represents overall WNBA viewership. It's been growing slowly but consistently for years. But look what happens here." She pointed to a sharp spike on the graph. "This is when news broke that you were entering the draft. Our ratings jumped 30% overnight, just from the announcement." Caitlin studied the graph, amazed at the dramatic change. "Just from people knowing I was going to play?" "Exactly. And look at this." Commissioner Engelbert showed her another chart. "These are our social media followers. We gained more followers in the month after your draft announcement than we had in the previous 2 years combined." The numbers were staggering. Caitlin had known she was popular, but seeing the actual impact on an entire league was overwhelming. "But here's what's really exciting," Commissioner Engelbert continued, her voice getting more animated. "This is just the beginning. We're in the middle of negotiating new television contracts right now, and the networks are offering us deals we never dreamed possible." She pulled out another document. "Our current TV deal is worth about $65 million over several years. The new offers we're getting are approaching $200 million. That's more than triple what we're making now." Caitlin's eyes widened. "Because of basketball getting more popular?" "Because of you, specifically," Commissioner Engelbert said with a smile. "The TV executives have told us directly that their interest is largely based on having you in the league. They've seen what you can do for ratings and they want to be part of it." Commissioner Engelbert leaned forward, her expression becoming more serious. "Caitlin, I need to be honest with you about something. I know about the overseas offers. I know the kind of money they're talking about, and I understand why anyone would be tempted." Caitlin felt her cheeks getting warm. "I haven't made any decisions yet. I know, and I respect that this is your choice to make. But I want to make sure you understand what's happening in the WNBA right now, because I don't think the full picture has been shared with you yet." Commissioner Engelbert stood up and walked over to a large whiteboard on the wall. She picked up a marker and started drawing a simple timeline. "Right now we have 12 teams in the WNBA. By 2027 we're planning to expand to 16 teams. Each new team means more jobs for players, more opportunities, and more money flowing into the league." She drew dollar signs above different points on the timeline. "But here's the key part. Our current collective bargaining agreement expires next year. That's when we negotiate new salary structures with the players' union." Caitlin was starting to understand where this was going. "So player salaries could change?" "Dramatically," Commissioner Engelbert confirmed. "Right now, rookie salaries are limited by our current agreement. But with these new TV deals and increased revenue, we're looking at the possibility of salary caps that are 3 or 4 times higher than what they are today." She wrote some numbers on the whiteboard. "Imagine if instead of making $76,000 this year, you could be making $300,000. And instead of a salary cap that limits veteran players to around 200,000, what if our top players could earn 800,000 or even $1 million per year? The numbers were still far below the overseas offers, but they represented a massive change for the WNBA. Is that really possible? Caitlin asked. Not only possible, but likely, Commissioner Engelbert replied. The math works out. If we're bringing in $200 million from TV contracts alone, plus increased ticket sales, merchandise, and sponsorships, we can afford to pay our players like the professionals they are. She sat back down across from Caitlin. But here's the thing. A lot of this depends on momentum. The TV networks are excited about women's basketball right now, but that excitement is largely because of you. If you leave for an overseas league, I'm not sure we can maintain the same level of interest. Caitlin felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders again. So you're saying the future of the entire league depends on my decision? I'm saying your decision will have a major impact, yes. But Caitlin, I'm not here to pressure you into staying just for the good of the league. I want you to understand that staying could be good for you too. Commissioner Engelbert pulled out one more document. This is a projection our financial team put together. If you stay in the WNBA and help us reach these revenue goals, your earning potential over a 10-year career could actually exceed some of those overseas offers. The projection showed potential salary increases, endorsement deals tied to WNBA, success, and even revenue-sharing opportunities. You could earn $50 million over 10 years, but do it while building something permanent here in America. But that's all theoretical, Caitlin pointed out. The overseas money is guaranteed right now. You're absolutely right, Commissioner Engelbert admitted. I'm asking you to take a risk on the future. But Caitlin, I've been in professional sports for 20 years, and I've never seen an opportunity like this. Women's basketball is at a tipping point, and you could be the person who pushes it over the edge. They spent the next hour talking about specific plans for league expansion, new arenas being built, and partnerships with major brands that were waiting to get involved in women's basketball. Commissioner Engelbert showed her concept drawings for new team uniforms, plans for improved travel conditions, and even ideas for a women's basketball Hall of Fame. We're not just talking about keeping things the way they are, Commissioner Engelbert explained. We're talking about transforming this entire sport. Better facilities, better marketing, better everything. But we need star power to make it happen. As the meeting came to an end, Commissioner Engelbert walked Caitlin to the elevator. I want to show you one more thing before you go, she said, handing Caitlin her phone. On the screen was a video message from a group of current WNBA players. Diana Taurasi, who had earlier said Caitlin should take the overseas money, was speaking directly to the camera. Caitlin, I want to apologize for my earlier comments, Diana said. After talking with the commissioner about what's really possible for this league, I changed my mind. We've been fighting for better conditions and better pay for so long, and now we finally have a real chance to make it happen. We need you here with us. Other players appeared in the video, each sharing their own message. Aja Wilson talked about the young girls who had started playing basketball because of Caitlin. Brianna Stewart mentioned the increased media coverage that was already benefiting all players in the league. Sue Bird spoke about the historical significance of this moment for women's sports. We're not asking you to sacrifice for us, Sue said in the video. We're asking you to help us build something that's never existed before, a women's professional sports league that actually pays its players what they're worth. As Caitlin rode the elevator down to the lobby, her mind was spinning with everything she had learned. The overseas offers were still tempting, but now she understood that staying in the WNBA wasn't just about accepting less money. It was about betting on a future that could be bigger than anything that currently existed. Walking out into the Indianapolis sunshine, Caitlin realized that her decision wasn't just about choosing between different amounts of money. It was about choosing between taking something that was already built versus helping to build something completely new. The question was, did she have the courage to bet on that future, knowing that if it didn't work out, she might never get another chance at the overseas money? And more importantly, could she live with herself if she didn't try to be part of something that could change women's basketball forever? For the first time since this whole process began, Caitlin felt like she was starting to see a path forward. The drive back to Iowa took Caitlin 4 hours, but she needed every minute of it to think. After her meeting with Commissioner Engelbert, her head was spinning with possibilities she had never considered before. The highway stretched out in front of her, familiar and comforting, as she made her way back to the place where everything had started. She pulled into the driveway of her childhood home just as the sun was setting. The house looked exactly the same as it had when she left for college 4 years ago. A modest 2-story home with a basketball hoop mounted above the garage door. That hoop had seen thousands of shots over the years, from her first wobbly attempts as a 6-year-old to the perfect form she had developed by high school. Her parents were waiting for her on the front porch, and she could see the worry in their faces. The past week had been overwhelming for all of them. "How did the meeting go?" her father asked as soon as she got out of the car. "It was eye-opening," Caitlin replied, giving both her parents a hug. "I learned a lot of things I didn't know before." They went inside and sat around the kitchen table where Caitlin had done her homework for most of her life. Her mother made coffee while Caitlin tried to explain everything Commissioner Engelbert had told her about the league's future plans. "So they think player salaries could go up that much?" her mother asked, clearly trying to process the numbers. "It's possible," Caitlin said, "but it's not guaranteed like the overseas money. It's more like an investment in something that might happen." Her father leaned back in his chair, the same way he did when he was working through a difficult problem at his job. "Sweetheart, your mother and I have been talking about this situation a lot. We want you to know that whatever you decide, we're proud of you. But we also want to make sure you're thinking about this the right way." "What do you mean?" Caitlin asked. "Well, we've never had much money," her father continued. "We've always made do with what we had, and we've been happy. But watching you play basketball, seeing how hard you've worked, knowing how much you've sacrificed, we want you to get everything you deserve." Her mother nodded in agreement. "When I was your age, I had dreams too. I wanted to be a teacher, and I did become one, but I never made much money doing it. I don't regret that choice, but I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had focused more on financial security." Caitlin could hear the unspoken message in her parents' words. They wanted her to take the overseas money, not because they were greedy, but because they knew how rare these opportunities were. "But there's something else to consider," her father added. "You've always been someone who thinks about others, not just yourself. Even when you were little, you shared your toys, helped your teammates, tried to make everyone around you better. That's who you are." After dinner, Caitlin walked out to the backyard where the basketball hoop stood under the porch light. She grabbed an old basketball from the garage and started shooting, something she had done thousands of times when she needed to clear her head. As she practiced, she thought about all the conversations she had been having. Everyone seemed to have a different opinion about what she should do, and all of them made sense in their own way. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her agent David. "The Spanish team wants an answer by Friday. They're getting nervous about waiting much longer." Friday was only 3 days away. The pressure was building, and she still didn't know what her heart was telling her to do. The next morning, Caitlin decided to visit her old high school. She walked through the hallways where she had spent 4 years of her life, eventually making her way to the gymnasium. The custodian recognized her and led her inside. The gym was empty, except for a group of middle school girls who were there for a summer basketball camp. Caitlin sat in the bleachers and watched them practice, remembering what it felt like to be that age and dream about playing professionally. One of the girls noticed her sitting there and whispered something to her. "Coach." Soon the entire group was looking in her direction with wide eyes. The coach, a woman in her 30s who looked familiar, walked over to where Caitlin was sitting. "Excuse me, but aren't you Caitlin Clark?" "Yes, ma'am," Caitlin replied. "I'm Jennifer Thompson. I actually played high school basketball here about 15 years ago. You probably don't remember me, but I remember watching you play when you were just starting out." Jennifer gestured toward the group of girls who were still staring. "Would you mind saying hello to them? Most of these girls have never met a professional athlete before." Caitlin walked onto the court where the girls immediately surrounded her. They were full of questions about college basketball, the WNBA draft, and what it was like to be famous. "Are you really going to play for the Indiana Fever?" asked one girl who couldn't have been more than 12 years old. "I'm still deciding," Caitlin answered honestly. "But you have to," the girl exclaimed. "My mom already bought tickets for us to go to games this season. She said we were going to watch the best basketball player in the world." Another girl raised her hand like she was in class. "My older sister is in college now, and she started playing basketball because she watched you on TV. She always says that if Caitlin Clark can do it, so can she." Listening to these young girls talk about their dreams and aspirations, Caitlin felt something shift inside her chest. These weren't just fans or statistics or television ratings. These were real people whose lives had been changed by watching her play basketball. "Can I ask you girls something?" Caitlin said, sitting down on the gym floor so she was at their eye level. "How many of you want to play college basketball someday?" Almost every hand went up. "And how many of you want to play professionally after college?" Again, most of the hands stayed raised. "Where do you want to play professionally?" Caitlin asked. "In the WNBA." Several girls shouted at once. "Why not overseas?" Caitlin asked. "There are professional leagues in other countries too." One girl looked confused by the question. "Because this is our home. We want to play here, where our families can watch us." Another girl added, "My dad says the WNBA is going to be huge someday, and we might get to be part of it." After spending an hour with the girls, Caitlin drove to a quiet park where she used to go when she needed to think during high school. She sat on a bench overlooking a small pond and tried to imagine her life 5 years from now. If she took the overseas money, she would be financially secure for the rest of her life. She could buy her parents a house, pay off their debts, and never worry about money again. She would be playing basketball in front of crowds who adored her, traveling the world, experiencing things most people could only dream about. But if she stayed in the WNBA, she would be betting on an uncertain future. There was no guarantee that the league's plans would work out. The increased salaries might not materialize. The TV deals could fall through. She could end up making a fraction of what she could have earned overseas. However, staying also meant she could be part of building something that had never existed before. She could help create a professional sports league where young girls in America could realistically dream of making a good living playing basketball. She could be the foundation that future generations built upon. Caitlin pulled out her phone and called her college coach. "Coach Bluter? It's Caitlin. I need to ask you something. If you were 22 years old and someone offered you $50 million to coach basketball in another country, what would you do?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "That's a tough question, Caitlin, but I think I would ask myself which choice I could live with for the rest of my life. Could I live with taking the money and wondering what might have been? Or could I live with passing up the money and risking that my gamble didn't pay off? What if both choices seem scary?" Caitlin asked. "Then you probably need to figure out which kind of scared you can handle better," Coach Bluter replied. "The scared that comes from taking a risk, or the scared that comes from playing it safe." That evening, Caitlin sat at her kitchen table with a legal pad and started making lists. On one side, she wrote down all the reasons to take the overseas money. On the other side, she wrote down all the reasons to stay in the WNBA. The overseas list was shorter but more concrete: guaranteed money, immediate financial security, world travel, less pressure. The WNBA list was longer but more uncertain: building something new, inspiring young girls, staying close to family, being part of American sports history. As she stared at the two lists, Caitlin realized that her decision wasn't really about basketball or money. It was about what kind of person she wanted to be and what kind of legacy she wanted to leave behind. The question was no longer whether she could afford to stay in the WNBA. The question was whether she could afford not to try to change women's basketball forever. Because if she didn't try, and if the opportunity was lost, she would spend the rest of her life wondering what could have been. Tomorrow, she would have to start making the phone calls that would determine not just her future, but potentially the future of women's sports in America. Friday morning arrived faster than Caitlin had expected. She woke up in her childhood bedroom with sunlight streaming through the same windows she had looked out of for years. Today was the day the Spanish team needed an answer, and she still hadn't made her final decision. Her phone was already buzzing with messages from her agent, reporters, and even some of her former teammates, who had heard rumors about what she was considering. The pressure felt overwhelming, but somewhere during the night something had shifted in her mind. She walked downstairs to find her parents already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with coffee and the morning newspaper. Her father looked up when she entered the room. "How are you feeling this morning, sweetheart?" he asked, studying her face carefully. "Actually, I think I know what I want to do," Caitlin said, surprising herself with how calm she sounded. "But I want to make some phone calls first." The first call she made was to Commissioner Engelbert. When the WNBA commissioner answered, Caitlin could hear the tension in her voice. "Caitlin, I hope I'm not being too pushy, but I wanted to check in with you. I know today is important." "Commissioner, I need to ask you something directly," Caitlin said. "If I stay in the WNBA and help with everything we talked about, but it doesn't work out the way you think it will, what happens to me?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Honestly, you would probably make less money than you could right now overseas. But Caitlin, I've been in business for a long time, and I've never been more confident about anything. The opportunity we have right now is historic." "But you can't guarantee it," Caitlin pressed. "No, I can't guarantee it," Commissioner Engelbert admitted. "I'm asking you to take a leap of faith with us. But I can promise you this. If you help us build what we're planning, your impact on sports will be remembered forever." After hanging up, Caitlin called her agent David. "Caitlin, please tell me you're calling with good news," David said immediately. "The overseas teams are getting anxious, and some of these offers might not stay on the table much longer." "David, I need you to set up a press conference for this afternoon," Caitlin said. "I'm ready to make my announcement." "Which announcement?" David asked carefully. "You'll find out with everyone else," Caitlin replied. "But make sure it's somewhere big enough for a lot of people." 3 hours later, Caitlin stood outside Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, the home arena of the Indiana Fever. The press conference had been set up in the main lobby, and she was amazed by how many people had shown up on such short notice. There were reporters from ESPN, Sports Illustrated, and local news stations. Several current WNBA players had flown in to be there, including some veterans who had been outspoken about the league's salary issues. She could even see some of the young girls from the basketball camp she had visited, standing with their parents in the back of the crowd. Commissioner Engelbert introduced her, and Caitlin walked up to the podium feeling more nervous than she had before any basketball game. The room fell completely silent as she adjusted the microphone. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "The past few weeks have been the most difficult of my life. Not because I've had bad choices to make, but because I've had incredible choices to make." She paused and looked out at the crowd, making eye contact with some of the young faces in the audience. "I want to start by acknowledging something that everyone already knows. I've received offers to play basketball overseas that would make me very wealthy, very quickly. Some of these offers are for more money than I ever dreamed possible." A murmur went through the crowd. Several reporters leaned forward, expecting her to announce that she was leaving. "I also want to acknowledge the incredible people who have supported me throughout this process. My family, who have sacrificed so much for my dreams. My agents, who have worked tirelessly to make sure I understood all my options. And Commissioner Engelbert and the WNBA, who have shown me a vision for women's basketball that is bigger than anything I had imagined." Caitlin took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything, but most importantly, I want to acknowledge the young girls who have written me letters, approached me at camps, and told me that they dream of playing professional basketball in America. Girls who see the WNBA not as a stepping stone to something else, but as the ultimate goal. She looked directly at the group of young basketball players in the back of the room. 3 days ago, I met a 12-year-old girl who told me that her family had already bought season tickets to watch me play for the Indiana Fever. She didn't ask me about overseas leagues or endorsement deals. She just wanted to know if she would get to watch her hero play basketball in her hometown. The room was completely silent now. Caitlin could see Commissioner Engelbert gripping the edge of her chair, That conversation made me realize that this decision isn't really about me. It's about what kind of future we want to build for women's basketball in America. It's about whether we believe that women's sports can be just as exciting, just as valuable, and just as financially successful as men's sports. Caitlin paused again, gathering her thoughts for the most important words she would ever speak. So today, I'm announcing that I will be staying in the United States and playing for the Indiana Fever in the WNBA. But more than that, I'm announcing my commitment to helping build something that has never existed before in women's sports. The room erupted. Some people cheered, others applauded, and she could see several reporters frantically typing on their phones. But Caitlin wasn't finished. This isn't just about basketball, she continued, raising her voice above the noise. Starting today, I'm partnering with the WNBA, Nike, and several other organizations to launch the Future Stars Initiative, a comprehensive program designed to grow women's basketball from the ground up. She gestured toward a large screen that had been set up behind her, which began showing slides with details about the new program. We're going to build new training facilities in underserved communities. We're going to provide scholarships for young girls who want to play basketball but can't afford the camps and training. We're going to work with schools to improve their girls' basketball programs. And we're going to show the world that women's basketball is worth investing in. The crowd was on their feet now. Caitlin could see tears in the eyes of some of the young girls who had come to watch her announcement. I want to be clear about something, Caitlin said, waiting for the applause to die down. I'm not making this decision because I don't think I deserve the money that was offered to me overseas. I'm making this decision because I believe we can build something here that will create opportunities for thousands of future players to earn that kind of money without having to leave their home country. She looked directly into the cameras that were broadcasting her announcement live. To the young girls watching this, I want you to know that your dreams of playing professional basketball in America are valid. We're going to work together to make sure that by the time you're ready to turn professional, the WNBA is a league where you can make a great living doing what you love. Commissioner Engelbert stood up and joined Caitlin at the podium. On behalf of the WNBA, I want to thank Caitlin for her incredible commitment to women's basketball, Commissioner Engelbert said, and I want to announce that the league is matching her commitment with the largest investment in player development and league expansion in our history. She pulled out a document and held it up for the cameras. We are officially announcing plans to expand to 16 teams by 2027, with a new collective bargaining agreement that will significantly increase player salaries and improve working conditions across the league. The questions from reporters came fast and loud. Someone asked if Caitlin was worried about the financial risk she was taking. Another wanted to know if she might reconsider if the overseas offers increased. I'm not worried about the financial risk, Caitlin answered confidently. I'm excited about the financial opportunity. We're going to prove that women's sports can be just as profitable as men's sports when they're given the same level of investment and support. As the press conference ended, Caitlin was surrounded by well-wishers and supporters. The young girls from the basketball camp pushed through the crowd to get closer to her. Thank you for staying, one of them said, her eyes bright with excitement. Now I know that my dream of playing in the WNBA is real. Later that evening, Caitlin sat in her apartment, finally able to relax for the first time in weeks. Her phone was still buzzing with messages of support from players, fans, and even some of the overseas teams who had offered her contracts, congratulating her on her decision. She looked out her window at the Indianapolis skyline, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. She had turned down guaranteed millions of dollars, but she had gained something that might be even more valuable: the chance to be part of building something that could change women's sports forever. The real work was just beginning. But for the first time since this whole process started, Caitlin felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She had chosen to bet on herself, on women's basketball, and on the belief that sometimes the biggest rewards come not from taking what's offered, but from building something new.